All right, let's finish up our series on Jupiter in the 12 houses. In this video, we're going to look at Jupiter in the 12th house. A lot of what's going on with Jupiter in the 12th house revolves around this dynamic. Jupiter is the planet of growth, but the 12th house is the house of decline. So you have the planet of growth in the house of decline. What kind of effects can you expect from such a combination of symbolism? Well, it's either a decline of growth or a growth of decline, which is basically the same thing, either way you look at it. Decline of growth, well, maybe they're short. Now, maybe you have Jupiter in the 12th house and you're an average height, or maybe you're even tall. That's fine. It doesn't mean that Jupiter in the 12th house doesn't symbolize shortness. Because what you are is a recipe of several astrological considerations, not just one. And just like ice cream has salt in it, a tall person might have Jupiter in the 12th house. Another ramification of the decline of growth, or the growth of decline, might be problems with weight. So like weight fluctuations, or being significantly overweight or significantly underweight. Another ramification of that is just like unhealthy growth. So maybe the body is kind of weak, or the body has grown in ways that aren't really so healthy. And another sense to growth isn't just physical, size or bodily growth, but it's also things like career growth or economic growth. So a decline of growth also means lack of career success, lack of salary increase, stuff like that. Let's have a look at Elvis Presley, because he has a reliable birth time and he has Jupiter in the 12th house. Was he short? No, he was a normal height, maybe a little bit on the tall side. Why? Well, in the whole recipe here, yes, he does have Jupiter in the 12th, but he also has a Sagittarian ascendant. Sagittarian tends to grow because it belongs to Jupiter. And he has his moon in Pisces, which also belongs to Jupiter, which tends to grow. So you see, the rest of the recipe is offsetting the shortness of Jupiter in the 12th. Elvis, however, is a really good example of someone with significant health problems and significant weight problems. I get the reasons why that matches so well. It's the same reasons why it doesn't match the shortness so well. Because of Jupiter being the planet of growth, having Jupiter sign rising and having the moon in Jupiter sign indicates growth is a focal point for your destiny. Also, if Sagittarius is rising, then his Jupiter in the 12th house is the first lord. And it's also the lord of his moon. So his first lord in the 12th house also adds to this recipe of unhealthiness. We certainly, however, cannot say that Elvis Presley was unsuccessful or didn't have growth in his career. He had fantastic growth in his career. So look to see how that is offset in his chart. It's very offset by just having a Raj Yoga between his 9th Lord Mercury and his 10th Lord the Sun. Secondly, you can see that the man has a lot of skill or talent, so his career is not likely to not succeed, or that's one thing that helps shore up against that. The way you would see that is that his 5th Lord is exactly more or less on the 11th cusp, and therefore exactly aspecting the 5th house. Also, when you're thinking about the results of a planet in a house, bear in mind the dignity not just of that planet, but also of the dispositor. So both Jupiter, the planet in the 12th house, and the dispositor Mars, since Jupiter is in Scorpio, Mars is sign, both of those guys have good dignity when you look at the Vargas. Now let's look at the next important theme that you should focus on when you're interpreting Jupiter in the 12th house. Jupiter symbolizes beliefs, and the 12th house symbolizes esoteric things that are not easily seen, things that are hard to believe because seeing is believing. So what does this mean about Jupiter in the 12th house? It means simply that your beliefs are very esoteric. You easily believe in things which aren't very immediately tangibly demonstrable. So you have unusual beliefs, esoteric beliefs, things that other people might not believe in, might be very important and significant to you. Another ramification of this is you have a really good imagination because you have a lot of trust in things which are not really visible. That means that you can spend a lot of time contemplating things that are really just your feelings or your imagination. So a lot of very significant writers have Jupiter in the 12th house. To name a few, Carlos Castaneda, a very good example because he ticks off both of these esoteric beliefs and very imaginative. H.G. Wells, Frank Herbert, and the list goes on. Also, L. Ron Hubbard belongs on this list, and let's take a look at his chart in detail because he's a fantastic match. So why is he such a great match? Well, it's not just that he has Jupiter in the 12th house, and it's not just that the 12th house is Scorpio, which sure helps. But it's really going on with this K2 being very tightly conjoined to his 12th house Jupiter. That really amplifies the interpretation of being very unusual in your beliefs, very esoteric in your beliefs, and very, very imaginative. Besides that, it's a Sagittarian ascendant, so the native tends to have a philosophical bent anyway. And his Jupiter is opposite Saturn, so the person tends to be more philosophical or deep. It also surely doesn't hurt at all that he has the 8th lord, the moon, in his 10th house. This really heightens the esotericness of the individual. And to highlight this even further, his Mercury is with the 9th lord and debilitated in the 4th house. One more very important issue to bear in mind when you're interpreting Jupiter in the 12th house. Jupiter represents faith. The 12th house represents enemies, things that are critical of you. So it's a clash of faith and criticism. So the person is very critical, especially of what most people usually believe in, especially of common religions, etc. It's like an enemy of faith, inimical to faith. Another way of saying this is that the people who we're supposed to put our trust in turn out to be our enemies when you have Jupiter in the 12th house, or you feel that way at least. You feel distrustful of the role models. So these people's critical nature can also come from a feeling of being jaded by having misplaced their trust. Another issue here that's going along with this is that Jupiter also represents teachers. So it's also a feeling like the teachers are the enemies. So the person with Jupiter in the 12th house isn't very teachable because they're not very malleable to the teacher. So they might not have very good experiences in school and so on. Now here I'd like to look at a very good example of this, Karl Marx. Very, very critical, the enemy of religion, the enemy of faith, a very grouchy person, a very grumpy person, but a very, very, very important philosopher. So kind of this critical and grumpy slant of Jupiter in the 12th house really holds true or becomes true in Karl Marx's case, especially because this Jupiter in the 12th is in Capricorn, so it's debilitated. And it's in Capricorn, which is also very critical. Yet this man is not just a grumpy old dude. He's probably the most socially impactful philosopher since Muhammad. So why is he such a great philosopher? Well, one of the things is that his Jupiter in the 12th is in a house exchange with Saturn. And just as with Ron Hubbard, this combination between Jupiter and Saturn gives a profundity to a person. And also, in this particular case, where it's Jupiter and Saturn and Jupiter is debilitated, this puts a spin on Jupiter's debilitation called Nichbhanga, which gives it a good side as well. He's particularly cantankerous and rancorous because also he has Mars debilitated in the 6th house. But he has a very strong intellect, even though he's not very teachable and had a lousy time at school, because he's got his 5th lord Mercury in the 5th house, Gemini. And obviously he's extremely revolutionary. Where would you see that in this chart? Well, it's very obvious in the 4th house, where the sun and the moon are tightly conjoined with Rahu at the same time as the native has an Aquarian ascendant. So to sum up what Jupiter in the 12th house represents, the first issue going on is Jupiter symbolizes growth and the 12th symbolizes decline. Therefore, the native is kind of a contradictory nature. They embody opposites, or they go through opposite phases in their life. They fluctuate a lot. Particularly, these fluctuations tend to affect their physical health and their weight, as well as their career success and their aspirations for success. The second issue about Jupiter in the 12th house is Jupiter symbolizes belief, and the 12th symbolizes the esoteric. So these natives are unusual thinkers. They have esoteric beliefs. They have very, very fertile and strong imaginations. The final issue with Jupiter in the 12th is that Jupiter signifies faith or teachers, but the 12th signifies enemies. So the natives with Jupiter in the 12th house tend to be difficult to teach. They tend to be critical of sources of wisdom and doubtful in general, skeptical in general. If you want to understand the whole context of your chart, the soil in which your interpretive seeds grow, then visit my website, vicdecara.com, and click Readings. My complete chart report explains each and every nook and cranny of your chart and will keep you occupied in self-discovery for years. I also have 2 groundbreaking new reports. The first of these, Your Nakshatra, organizes your active nakshatras in order of their importance to you and presents the fundamental interpretations for the planets that occupy them. The newest report, Star Strength, uses a system called Tara-Habala to unfold 90 interpretations of the nuanced relationships between all the planets in your chart, which paints a rich and detailed picture of how your various strengths cooperate or compete with each other. Order these or any of my reports and accelerate your journey to deeper self-understanding.